I want to share with you a word today. And it's interesting, I realized that when we very first started our church, we often didn't really do anything specific on Father's Day and Mother's Days. We would just continue on in whatever series we're doing. And then over the last handful of years, I've gotten a lot more passionate about the church speaking to the importance of fathers and mothers. Because we have a crisis going on in our culture right now. We have a crisis going on. In fact, there's a recent study that was just done where they found that 1 in 4 children in America now live in a home without a father. 25% of homes in the United States of America do not have a dad. But this is what's terrifying out of that. What they found is in that home where there's no dad, those kids are twice at greater risk for infant mortality, 4 times greater risk for poverty, 7 times more likely to become pregnant as a teen, 4 times more likely to be obese, 2 times more likely to drop out of school, and had increased metrics of likelihood in behavioral problems, crime, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and suffering abuse at the hands of other people. That's like crazy, isn't it? Those numbers? There's this reality that there is something dangerous about this current trend that's happening where there's no dads in place. In fact, this is what the statistics would show, okay? This is what statistics show. This is just science. This isn't me talking about what I believe in regards to the Bible. The stats show when dad's not there, okay, it's more dangerous. That's what the statistics have ended up reading is just if dad's not there, it's more dangerous for the kids. We need dads desperately. But at the same time, where this is like the science is showing us like, wow, whenever dad's not there, it's more dangerous. Our culture has embraced this interesting mindset where we don't talk about dads like they're that necessary. In fact, very often it's the opposite. I could show you this pretty easily. For any of you, can you think about like a TV show or a movie that you've seen, okay, recently, where the mom in the family is a bumbling buffoon? She's a moron. She can barely take care of her kids. Thank God, dad knows how to take care of the kids and also take care of mom. Can you think of many shows, movies like that? Okay, now then real quick, reverse the genders. How many movies have you seen where it's the opposite and it's dad can't take care of the kids, can barely get through, right? He's a bumbling buffoon, and mom parents both the kids and the dad. It's like one after another after another. I was realizing literally all the shows that I grew up with watching that were like my favorite TV shows, they all fell into that category. I was thinking back and I was like, The Simpsons, Home Improvement, Everybody Loves Raymond. I was like, these are all the shows that I grew up watching, and every single one of them is like, mom's in charge, dad can barely function. And that's fascinating because the reality is while we're recognizing the science that we desperately need dads, we're talking about them as if they're basically useless. And as long as mom is in charge, everything is going to be fine. We need dads. In fact, if I may, as we go through the rest of this message, if you've been looking at what's going on in culture lately and you've been wondering what's going on, I have a sneaking suspicion that the answer that none of us are recognizing is dads. That the answer to what's going on currently in our culture, and if you think, how could we change it? That actually the answer is dads. So I want today's message to be clear and straightforward. So if you're a dad, first of all, I want to encourage you with this message. I want to challenge you with this message. If you're not a dad, if you're the person who's been single, you don't have kids yet, or you're before having kids, or, situation you never ended up having kids, this doesn't get you off the hook, because I think that same calling for dads is in all of us as men, whether we have biological kids or not. And then for you who are the wives, you who are the moms, you who are the ones who are raising that next generation of dads, I need you to understand how critical this is. And this isn't like a check out message because you're like, well, I'm not a dad, so I don't need to learn. I need you to recognize this, because if I'm honest, if wives and moms got this vision for the men in their lives, they could call greatness out of their sons. They could call greatness out of their husbands. So if maybe the man's not here today, you're here alone as the wife, I would say please lean in, because what I'm going to say today, if you can begin to call this out of your husband, out of the dad of your children, greatness could come about. So the verse I want to look at is 1 Corinthians 16, 13 through 14. It's pretty simple, in fact. This wasn't specifically spoken to dads, but it's so cool in regards to what Paul said to the Corinthian church. He gives this kind of closing statement to them, and I think it's a perfect picture of what I would say to dads today. He says this: be on guard. Stand firm in the faith. Be courageous. Be strong. And do everything with love. I like this because it kind of lines up with me how I think, and I think a lot of men think very practically. I like it that it's just 5 to-dos back to back. And this is what he says, okay, just to break it down so you get it. It's this. He says, be on guard, stand firm, be men, and I'll explain how I got there in just a second. Be strong, and do everything with love. 5 challenges for you today if you're a dad to look at and think about what you're doing with your life as a father, or if you want to be a father someday, what you could lean into in your life, okay? Now, first of all, be on guard. Dads, we are meant to guard our children. In fact, I like this verse in Proverbs. In Proverbs, it says this: my child, listen when your father corrects you. Don't neglect your mother's instruction. And this is interesting because it shows that there are kind of 2 different dynamics in regards to what mom does and what dad does for the children. That mom is very often in charge of instruction, but father is meant to be in charge of correction. And what I mean is that for us as dads, I think we are called to give the guardrails to our children. Mom usually spends way more time instructing kids, very commonly, instructing the children in regards to how to work out their life and what to do and how to interact. But what dad's calling is to give the guardrails, to set clear standards, and then to coach when children go beyond those guardrails and bring them back to the place where it's not dangerous anymore. We have to take responsibility for setting up these clear guardrails in our kids' life of what the standards are, what our family's culture is. And second, after we set those borders, we as dads are meant to be the people who sit at those borders and then protect our children from anything coming across those borders. I told you when dad's not there, it's more dangerous. And you say, why though? That's kind of surprising. So when dad's not in the house, it is more dangerous for children. Why would that be? And I think this is the reason. Because dads are meant to be defenders. Dads are meant to be defenders. It's our calling as dads. We are meant to be the defense to the world coming to take our children away from what our values are. We are meant to be the defense to the world for those who would try to come and harm our children. Dads, in general, let's just be real dads, we are far more disagreeable than our wives, are we not? We're the ones who are no, you're not talking to my kid that way, right? No. Stand up against the idea of when somebody says that they're gonna teach your kid something you don't believe in, you're nah, we're not doing that, right? Dads are meant to be the defenders who stand there and refuse to let their children be taken advantage of. This is important because we live in a sinful and broken world, and dads need to take on this responsibility to say, I understand the dangers of this world, and I refuse to let it come into my children's life. In fact, a handful of years ago, I saw this picture, and I remember it stood out to me because I thought that's what being a dad looks like. There's this cool picture that was created. And it's this dad who's walking through shark-infested waters, and he's got his little girl on his shoulders. And it's so good because the point is that she doesn't even understand how much danger surrounds her. And it's not the dad's intention to even get her to understand. She doesn't need to be scared. She doesn't need to be terrified about sharks. Dad's job is, I'm going to keep you up here in the sunlight and I'll deal with the sharks. That's my job. That's my job. And this is what it is to be a defender, where we take that opportunity to stand in that gap and say, I refuse to let these things that would come to try to harm my children be able to interact. And like I said, when dad's not there, it's more dangerous. And I think it's because dads are meant to be that defense, that when something comes and tries to destroy their children, they're the ones who stand up and refuse. They're the ones who cause this thing. They're the ones who get into the fight and make sure that they don't let it happen in their lives. Now, This is, of course, like a physical representation. And many of you are like, physically, absolutely. I would never let anyone harm my children. I would never let them do anything to them. And I would say, absolutely, that is your job. In the middle of the night, right, some bump in the night, man, be prepared. Absolutely. I'm a proud 2A supporter. I have so many guns, I can't even tell you. The biggest problem, bump in the night, would be deciding which gun to use in that scenario in order to be able to defend my family, because nobody's coming to hurt my family. But I need you to get this. As much as you might be a tough dad where you're like, yeah, that's it, I need you to get the fact that this this defense isn't just physical, it's spiritual as well. It's not just that you're meant to be a physical defense for your kids, you're meant to be a spiritual defense for your children as well. There's this fascinating story in the Old Testament of a guy named Job. He was really, really faithful to God. And it said that his kids would get together and they would kind of host these parties. And Job was concerned about what would happen at these parties, right? Like maybe, getting a little too wild, getting a little too crazy, inviting the wrong people over to these parties. And it says this in this story in Job. It says Job's sons would take turns preparing feasts in their homes. They would also invite their 3 sisters to celebrate with them. And when these celebrations ended, sometimes after several days, Job would purify his children. He would get up early in the morning and offer a burnt offering for each of them. Job said to himself, "Perhaps my children have sinned and have cursed God in their hearts." This was Job's regular practice. It's interesting because what Job had in his mind was, it's not just my responsibility to take care of my children physically. It's my responsibility to take care of them spiritually as well. And it's interesting because he would come and he would offer a sacrifice for them, saying that I'm going to try to stand in that gap spiritually for them, and I'm going to try to do what's right in connecting them to God. Now, this is important for you, Dad, because this is who you're meant to be too. You're meant to be a spiritual defender for your kids. Now, you can't accept Jesus for them, right? You can't force them into faith. But what you can do is you can do that second challenge. You can stand firm. The first was to be on guard. The second is to stand firm. And that means that you would set a firm foundation of faith underneath of your children. As dad, even if mom is more faithful than you, she knows more about the Bible than you, she knows more about Jesus than you, you can still be the one in your family that sets a firm foundation for your family, where you set those guardrails in that culture of saying, like, we're a Christian family. Like, we go to church on Sunday. We don't do blank. We don't believe X. We don't participate in Y. And even if your wife knows more about all the spiritual backgrounds of that, you can still be that firm foundation of setting a firm example for your children. In fact, I love this, Proverbs 14:26-27. It says this: "Those who fear the Lord are secure. He will be a refuge for their children. Fear of the Lord is a life-giving fountain. It offers escape from the snares of death." But what stood out to me was that first verse in that. Did you see this? Those who fear the Lord are secure. He will be a refuge for their children. Isn't that surprising? Because don't you think it would have said, those who fear the Lord are secure, he'll be a refuge for them? Right? Because it's about somebody who fears the Lord. But in Proverbs, it specifically says that if you're the dad, and if you fear the Lord, if you have great respect for the Lord, your children will find a refuge in God. That firm foundation of we respect the Lord and we follow after his dictates for our life, it actually blesses the next generation underneath of you. Dads are meant to be defenders, but listen to me, you need to defend them against the spiritual attacks in their life as well. You might have all that preparation and all that stuff where I'm like, I'm never going to let somebody come harm my kid. But are you standing in the gap spiritually? Are you praying for your children? You have all those preparations. No one would ever bust into our house and hurt my kid. But it's like, well, what about the demonic stuff that's trying to chase after their life? Do you pray over your children? Do you model for them a deep fear of the Lord, a deep respect for the Lord? I'm going to tell you, dads, one of the best things that you can do, and this might be awkward for you because maybe you've never really done this before, you haven't really spent a lot of time in this yet, is you need to pray for your children out loud. You need to go to your children, maybe before they go to bed or an opportunity where they're awake. And listen, you need to either take their hands or you need to put your hand on their head. And you don't need to have perfect words. You don't have to have some sort of perfect, fluent, oh man, that sounded so beautiful. You just need to pray defense over their life. God, I pray that you would bless my son. I pray that you would chase after him and you would reveal your goodness to him. I pray that you would make his body strong. I pray that you would make his mind wise. I pray that you would put defense around him of all the things the enemy would try to bring into his life. And dads, what you can do just by doing that consistently to your kids is you're showing them that you have this deep respect and fear for the Lord. That you're not just providing for them physically, you're providing for them spiritually, and that you would take moments to pray over them. And as awkward as it might be, and you're like, man, I totally fumbled that one. That was just terrible. Start with like that 3-word prayer. God, thank you so much for my daughter. Bless her. Give her favor. In Jesus' name, amen. Awesome. Awesome. Show her that you're standing in the gap for her spiritually, that you're the one who's playing defense for her. So, be on guard, stand firm. Number 3, he said, be courageous. But I told you that I actually translated that to be men, and this is the reason why. This verse that we looked at, be on guard, stand firm in faith, be courageous, be strong, and do everything in love. If you actually look at the original translations of this verse, what it actually reads is this. Be on guard, stand firm in the faith, be men, be strong, and do everything with love. That's actually the literal translation of that verse. It doesn't say be courageous. It says be men. And I need you to get this, that there is this calling for you, dads, to embrace your masculinity. Very often you'll find as dads that you don't feel like you can offer as much to your children as mom does. Mom's better at being a mom than you are at being a dad. She's better at that interaction with the kids. She's better at the touchy-feely. She's better at understanding their emotions. She's better at dealing with the breakdowns. And you're like, I can't do that. And you think that maybe you're like some sort of lesser of the two parents because you can't do what mom does. But I need you to get this. Kids don't need two moms. They need a mom and they need a dad. They need a dad. People will say, when you say be men, that sounds like some sort of like macho, chauvinistic, and I'm like, well, good, okay? Because let me be really clear with you. Dads are men. Genesis 1:27, it says this, okay? God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. This is cool. Understand, we are image bearers of God. That's why we believe there's so much intrinsic value in human beings that we bear the images of God. But I need you to get this, that the two of us were created to both image God. And when he did, he created this amazing and beautiful binary, male and female. He created them. That in this, He took his image and he gave those qualities to male and to female. And I need you to get this because it's really important. Dads are men. Dads are men, and it doesn't matter how many other, mom's doing a really great job and mom's trying really hard. And I'm not saying she isn't, absolutely. There are terrible situations where moms are stuck in a place where they're the only parent taking care of these children. But I need you to get, this is why I said we're talking about deep cultural issues in regards to our world. Because again, the stats show that when dad's not there, it's more dangerous. They don't just need another friend. They don't just need another mom. They don't just need another figure. They need dads. They need a man in their life who can show them what it's like to be a man. Young girls need a man in their life to show them what a man should be like. I need you to get this, okay? Again, the stats, the reality of our current world that we live in. 90% of single parent families are headed by single moms, okay? And in these 90% of single families headed by moms, these families account for 63% of youth suicide, 90% of homeless and runaway children, 71% of high school dropouts, 70% of youth who are in institutions, 80% of youth who are in prisons, and 85% of children with behavioral disorders. there is a problem going on in our culture for sure, and I need you to get one of the big underlying factors is dad's not there anymore. And kids do not do well when dad's not there anymore. It becomes much more dangerous, and all of those things that we would wish to not have part of our children's lives, they all abound in families where all there is mom that's taking care of the kids. Now, I'm not picking on you if you're a single mom, but I'm saying this is why it's so critical that for us, we talk about why it's important that you marry the right man, that you take and you vet the right process so you have the right partner, because without dads in the home, man, the stats are terrifying. Like I said, little girls need to understand what a man is. Little boys need to see this picture of what being a man is. This be courageous. Like I said, it translates to be men, and it's because dads are supposed to be that courageous voice in the family. Dads are meant to be that courageous anti-culture voice in the family. They're meant to be the ones who set those firm foundations and are on guard. And I need you to get this too. I don't just mean be male, be masculine. I mean be men. One of the problems that's happening in our culture right now is we have boys who are having kids. Boys. And then they're not growing up even after they have kids. There's this verse, 1 Corinthians 13:11. Paul says this, "When I was a child, I spoke and I thought and I reasoned as a child. But when I grew up, I put away childish things." I need you to get men. If you want to be a dad, if you are a dad, if you've recently become a dad, this is your call. This is like God's moment where he gives you something that challenges you to stop being a kid and to grow up. We have this problem inside of our culture where so many men who are trying to lead their families, who are trying to be dads, are still simultaneously trying to be children. If you're a dad, you might need to change some of your friendships. No more hanging out with all of the tools that you used to spend time with, who are all a bunch of punks, right? Maybe you need to change the scenario of how you use your time. Let me just be real. I'll just offend everybody today. This is terrific. Maybe it's time to unplug the Xbox and throw it away. I need you to you have been invited into so much higher of a calling. If God has put a child in your life, and again, let me just be real again, this doesn't even have to be the fact that it's like your blood. You might be in a scenario where you step into a relationship and all of a sudden you have a child that you're caring for. I've seen a lot of men, this has been really encouraging, where you see that maybe sister and somebody else in their family has kids and dad didn't stick around, and the brother, the uncle decides, I'm going to step up and I'm going to be dad for this kid. Because this little boy or this little girl needs somebody to be a father figure in their life. Same thing. That you take on that responsibility and go, it's time to put some childish things behind because I have something so much more important to give my heart and my energy to. The last thing he says, second to last, was this: be strong. Be strong. And this doesn't just mean like pumping iron, having strong arms, right? Being able to punch somebody really hard. That's cool too. But when I think about what dads do in their life, I don't think many of you are going to struggle to be strong enough physically, but I do think what you're going to struggle with is being strong enough emotionally and spiritually. Being a dad is really, really hard. If any of you guys don't know my scenario, I have 4 children, 6 and under. 4 children, 6 and under. Literally 6, 4, 2, 1. You're like, yeah, crazy, right? Absolutely. It's insanity. But I need you to get that you're supposed to be strong to be a dad, but it's usually not the physical side, it's that emotional side, because you need to be strong enough to keep up with this for like 30 years. It's not enough to just be like strong today. What I mean is you need to have resilience to be able to go through for years and years and years. There's this amazing verse in James 1:27. It's actually cool because it talks about pure and genuine religion. It says, pure and genuine religion in the sight of God the Father means caring for orphans and widows in their distress and refusing to let the world corrupt you. This is an amazing verse for dads. And I remember reading it for a while and thinking about that's like what our faith is meant. We're meant to care for widows and orphans. But I remember realizing this, we're supposed to care for people who are poor. as Christians. But you know the best way to care for somebody who's poor? Don't let them become poor. Like, it's actually better than caring for people who are poor to set up good foundations in their life so they never become poor. That's a better strategy. And this idea of we're meant to care for orphans and widows, I think the exact same. You know, the best thing we could do for orphans and widows is keep them from becoming orphans and widows. Being a dad is hard, and dad, you're meant to be the defender, but I need you to get this. If you don't set up defense for yourself, how are you going to be able to defend your kids? One of the problems where there's all these dads missing from families, dads missing from the households, is because they didn't do the work to defend themselves. They didn't do the work to set up healthy rhythms for themselves. They didn't do the work to defend themselves spiritually from the attacks of the enemy. And the reason why there's so many children who don't have dads is because way too many dads end up giving up on themselves. And then they leave their families. They give up on themselves and then they walk away. They give up on themselves and they destroy themselves with substance abuse. They give up on themselves and they end up ending their own life. If you're a dad, I need you to get this, okay? If you're not there, nobody's coming to defend your children. When you read those stats about what happens to the kids who don't have dads, I need you to root that in yourself, that maybe as you've struggled through this, maybe you've struggled through seasons of like, I don't know if I can do this. I need you to get the fact that when you start feeling like that feeling of like, I just need to walk away, or, like, I just need to numb myself with this substance, or honestly, like I said, it always blows my mind. Like, did you know, I'm literally me, okay? This right here. This is the number one demographic of people who kill themselves. Did you know that? It's middle income, middle-aged white guys. That's the number one demographic for those who end their own lives. They're not kids, not minorities, not people who even like stand outside where they talk about like, I don't fit into the normal gender stereotype. Like, those have really bad scenarios, but the number one number that ends up killing themselves, it's people who look like me. Like just average white dudes. And friends, I'm telling you, the devil will try to start whispering, man, evil into your mind, evil into your heart, because he knows if he can get you to give up, if he can get you to end your life, to end your connection to your kids because of substance abuse, to walk away because you don't think you can handle it, then he just has an open field day on your family. No one's coming to protect your children if you're not the one who's there. You need to protect yourself so you can protect them. Lastly, he says this, do everything in love. Be on guard, stand firm, be men, be strong, and do it all in love. Dads are meant to be defenders. And you're like, yeah, absolutely. Dads are meant to be defenders. But I need you to also get, dads are also meant to be baby cuddlers. Dads are meant to be boo-boo kissers. Dads are meant to be princess movie watchers. Dads are meant to be hand holders. Dads are meant to be tea party attenders. Both of those are true. Ephesians 6:4 says this, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. I need you to make sure that you're not defending them and then being the one who's damaging them at the same time. You need to be strong, absolutely. You need to play defense. You need to be the one who protects your children. But also, I don't need you to be so hard that then all you do is you just provoke your children to anger, and you're the one who's tearing their life out from underneath of them because of your rage, because of your tension, because of what you bring to the family. I need you to get the fact that I don't mean you need to just like chill out. I love this verse. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, which means the opposite of, instead of provoking your child to anger, rather bring them up with discipline and instruction. It doesn't mean that you are like a hands-off dad, like you don't want to be too hard on them, so be hands-off. He actually says, no, don't be like this dad who ends up constantly running them down and constantly like picking at them. But the opposite of that is clear instruction and discipline. that you set up clear standards and you follow up with them, that you guide them through this. I need you as a dad to understand that you are meant to be tender and tough. Both and. Dads are meant to be the ones who can be exceedingly tender for their families. The ones who can be the softie who cuddles the kids, but then also the one who can stand up and defend their children. The goal is to be the dad who's comfortable combing his daughter's hair and braiding her hair and holding her hands and walking with her, and then being the dad that if some man tries to touch your daughter, you can punch his teeth through the back of his throat, right? Both and. Not just hard all the time, not just tender all the time, but the combination of both. Friends, that's who you're meant to be as a dad. We need dads desperately. When dad isn't there, it's more dangerous, and the reason why is because dads are meant to be defenders. Some of you as dads today, you recognize something that you didn't clearly understand. What your role is, why you are meant to be part of your family, why, even though, like I said, mom might be better at the whole parenting thing, why it's still critical that you are part of your kids' lives because your goal is to be the defender for your children. Now, today, here's what I'd love to invite you to do. If you're a dad, or if you're being a dad, and you're kind of looking forward into becoming the person who you want to be a dad, I would ask you to look at that list once again. This is my challenge to dads today. Be on guard, stand firm, be men, be strong, and do everything with love. And I just wonder if you're a dad today, if there might not be one of those that God would point out to you and say, this is the one you need to work on right now. Maybe you're really good at being on guard, but like you're really, really struggling at like standing firm in your faith, right? Maybe the reality is you've leaned really hard into the tough and you're like, man, I have not been doing everything with love. I've really been provoking my children. I've been so hard on them. Maybe you've really been pulling away and you realize the fact that you just need to become like a man. Like I need to step up and I need to stop trying to run away from my responsibilities with my children, and I need to take this responsibility on. I wonder if today, if God might bring one of these to your mind that you need to work on. And as well what I said before, women, those who aren't dads, please call us to greater than what we are. If you're the mom of those young boys, right, you have such a great opportunity to be able to, if dad's in the house, speak grandness over him to your children. Even if he doesn't have everything figured out, even if he's a mess, that you would just speak things over him to your children so your young boys and your daughters would look up to their dad and would have such a high view of him because of what he's meant to be in the family. If you're, wife, that you would look at your husband and you would call this out of him. Where you would say, thank you so much for being our defender. Thank you so much for standing up for our children. Thank you so much, right, for being that strong masculine figure that I can't give. Thank you. And like I said, for some more of you too, maybe you're not a dad. But just because you haven't had kids physically doesn't mean this still isn't your call. Every single weekend, we have hundreds of kids who come to Acts Kids, and for a bunch of them, dad's not in the picture. And I love the fact that they can be part of our church because we have a bunch of strong men here who speak courage into their lives. Men who show them what a godly man looks like and be able to put that into it. Maybe there is someone in your life, like I said, who they don't have a dad in the house, and you realize this is an opportunity I have to be able to show them what a man looks like in their relationship. Maybe it is your sister's kids or something like that. And you would feel like I need to step up and I need to do that for them. We need dads. This is the answer. If you're wondering, is culture gonna get better? I would say this: if dads get better, culture will get better. If dads get better, culture will get better. Let me pray for you. God, thank you so much for this day. Thank you, Jesus, for your clear call to us as men and women. And thank you for the really tough calling of becoming a dad. God, I pray that you would send courage into the hearts of fathers today. I pray that you would call them forward to confidence. You would call them forward to taking those steps, to being on guard, to standing firm, to being men. God, I pray that you would let the church be such an outlier of great dads that the world would marvel at it. The world would say these kids who grow up in the church are so different. And one of the reasons why is because their dads are so present and active in their lives. They seem to have such more of a calling on their life than just the average dad. God, I pray that you'd help us change the community, the culture. And I pray that you would do it through dads. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.